Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Hello. My name is Anne-Marie Bonneau, and on behalf of US Reduces, welcome to our December meeting. Yoyoy asked me if I would talk about my rice glue. So yesterday on Instagram, I posted a reel, or I shared a reel that I made a couple of years ago. On Instagram, I'm at Zero Waste Chef. Anyway, I had some leftover rice and I turned it into glue. It's really easy to do. I added water and like whirred it around in one of those bullet blender things and cooked it down, and works really well. I also have a recipe on my blog for wheat paste, which is very similar. You cook flour and water. You don't have to. I always cook it. It works really well. And because we're about to enter the annual Waste Fest, known as the holidays, and our waste goes up just by a huge amount. I think it's something like 25%. And, it's already huge as it is. So any way that you can reduce waste over the holidays is great. And I also think it makes a calmer, more peaceful holiday, in my humble opinion. Anyway, so with that, I'll send it over to Yoyoy, right? Or no, Stephanie?
Actually, today we have L'Oreal to moderate because Stephanie is
our speaker. Thank you, L'Oreal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And
L'Oreal, please take it away. Thank you so much.
All right, folks, welcome and thank you for joining the meeting. I am part of the New York City Reduces group, along with Amy. And I am here to introduce Mrs. Stephanie Miller, who is our guest speaker today. Stephanie J. Miller is the former director of the climate business at the World Bank Group and the author of Zero Waste Living, The 80-20 Way, The Busy Person's Guide to a Lighter Footprint. She founded Zero Waste in DC, where she reaches a wide audience through sustainability, consultations, keynote presentations, and learning events.
Okay, is that my cue?
Yes, a little different from.
Thank you, L'Oreal, very much for the introduction. And thanks, Anne-Marie, for kicking us off, as always, and inspiring all of us. Certainly me, I will up my game during Waste Fest and try the rice glue. I meant to try rice glue last year. I am also, I don't know if you said in the introduction, and I don't think I sent in my bio, that I also am the founder of DC Reduces, which is why I'm part of this group, US Reduces. And I realized when Yayoi asked me to speak that it's a little uncomfortable for me to speak to all of you, because we're all trying to do the same thing. And I don't like to preach to the converted. So what I thought I would do is tell you a little bit about my story. And I really would love to hear other folks' ideas on reducing waste. But I'm going to, first of all, give me 1 second. I'm going to find my PowerPoint and share it. Okay. Oops. That did not go as planned. Hold on 1 second. Escape. Stop share. Just bear with me 1 second, because I had a couple of PowerPoints open right before this. Okay. Let's close this. Okay. Sorry, I do this for a living, but I'm having a. Okay, here we go. All right, can you see the first slide? Okay. So what I thought about when I was thinking about this group is whether we know it or not, whether we admit it or not, we are all activists. And I will say I came to the activist title a bit reluctantly and slowly. I think Yayoi actually was the first one to attach that word to my name, but now I really embrace it. So I wanted to tell you a bit about my story and hopefully get some conversation going about other folks' journey and what they're trying to do and how we can support each other. And I thought I would call this talk How a Visit to the Dry Cleaners Made Me a Climate Activist, because when I sort of think about my story, I think you'll understand what I mean in a moment. Whenever I give a talk on the subject of zero waste living, I start with a couple of questions. Again, I'm going to imagine that most of you know the answers to these questions. So the first one is, did you know that if food waste were a country, it would be ranked third behind the US and China in terms of greenhouse gas emissions? So probably not a huge surprise to a lot of you, but for me, 7 years ago, I did not know, even though I was working on climate change, that 8% of greenhouse gas emissions are caused by food waste. I had a complete blind spot to this. Another thing I did not know 7 years ago was this statistic you've probably seen a lot by now, that it's expected that by 2050 there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. Shocking statistic, and I think a lot of us are starting to realize that's definitely the trajectory. So I want to show you, this was me 7 years ago. I was in this particular photo, I was in Switzerland giving a talk on climate finance to a group of investors. I was leading climate change for the organization I was in, which meant that I was really focused on renewable energy investments, energy efficiency, green buildings investments, and I felt good about my day job. I'm passionate about climate change mitigation. But I will admit that at this period in my life, I was a walking climate contradiction, because I would come home, or I'd come home from a trip like this one, and I would literally not know where to begin to live my own life more sustainably. So I was doing it at work. I mean, I was doing good things around climate mitigation at work, but did not know where to begin in my own life. And I was busy, and I felt like I already had a huge carbon footprint because of all the travel I was doing for my work. And anyway, if I, recycled a little bit better or did some things a little bit better, I wondered, would it even make any difference at all? And then about 6 years ago, I decided to leave my 25-year career at the World Bank Group, take a little break before my son was heading off to college. I called that break my gap year. And I finally had time on my hands to explore that question that had been nagging at me. Could I live my own life more sustainably? And the very first thing I did a couple weeks after quitting my job was I walked into my local dry cleaners, a place that I would go to every single Saturday with my suits and whatever needed to be pressed, and had always been bothered, always, by all this plastic waste that I was bringing home with my clean clothes. And so I went in this particular day. I actually didn't have anything to dry clean because I wasn't working, but I brought my husband's something in there, and I asked the clerk if they'd be willing to put my clean clothes, or his clean clothes, into our own garment bag, which I had brought with me that day. And to my surprise, it was not a big deal whatsoever. And I left, I was on cloud nine, and I realized, wow, that little question, and now I'm going to completely obliterate that source of waste in my life. It felt great. And then I got to thinking a couple weeks later, well, I live in a pretty progressive neighborhood, and maybe there are other folks in my neighborhood that would appreciate the chance to reduce their waste as well in this particular way. And so I went back to the dry cleaners and I asked them if they'd be willing to offer their clients reusable bags. And well, it's a husband-wife team. The wife was thrilled. The husband was not so thrilled because he didn't want to buy the bags, and would customers even buy them? But he agreed to pilot it. They bought 20 bags. The whole program took off. And this is, well, you recognize the sticker. This is the DC Reduces sticker, which I'll get, of course, when I started DC Reduces a few years later, a couple years ago, this dry cleaners was the first place I hit up to put the sticker in the window. But this is the wife of the husband-wife team, and you can see behind her these green reusable bags that they purchase, and customers own them. I mean, buy them from the dry cleaners and own them and bring them back every time they go to the dry cleaners. They had told me that business, despite the pandemic, they were doing pretty well. And I happened to know people in my neighborhood that started going to this dry cleaners because they were offering the reusable bags. So I think their business benefited from this. And as many of you may know, a lot of people are having to go back to work full-time in the office again. And so I just went in a couple days ago, and it seems that she just ordered 500 more bags because they're expecting a lot more business and a lot of people that are going to be using these bags. I have a video at the end I'm going to show you of what it looked like 3 days ago when I went in again. Okay, so this was my start. I wasn't an activist. I just asked a question at the dry cleaners, and this is what happened. And it felt great. It wasn't my initiative. It was theirs. I supported them. I put, signs up in the neighborhood, but it wasn't my action. It wasn't my business. It's not my business. But it felt great. And anyone I talked to in this window of time, a few weeks after this happened, I would excitedly tell them the story. And so one day I was having lunch with a friend of mine, an ex-colleague, who said, Stephanie, you really ought to, do you know about zero waste living? And if you don't, you really ought to read a book about it, because I think you'd really like the idea. And so she pointed me to the first book, B. Johnson's book, Zero Waste Home, and I devoured it. And then I read the next book. Anne Marie's book was not out yet, but I started following her on Instagram. I basically was so excited by this concept that we could actually focus on our consumption, drastically reduce our waste, and lots less in landfills, incinerators, and the environment. And of course, I loved what they were symbolizing. And you see that in these two photos of the two authors, this idea that they could get all of their landfill trash to fit into a mason jar, their annual landfill trash to fit into a mason jar. Now, remember, I wasn't working. I had my gap year. So I was very excited because I thought I could get to this too. Man on the moon stuff, but I could do it. And so I started doing a lot of the things they recommended. I started doing a lot of things Anne Marie recommended. I started making my own, I started composting, making my own household cleaner, recycling a lot more carefully. And lo and behold, our trash went way down. Everybody, I think my son was the one responsible for taking the trash to the curb every week. And he was like, Mom, where's the trash? There was trash, but it was a lot less. And it was very noticeable by everybody. And it kept going down and down and down. And that felt great. But months later, it was not nothing. It was not zero. And it was not a mason jar worth of trash. Forget about a year in a week. I was never getting to this. So I started panicking a little bit. I thought I'm going to be going back to work full time. And, this is taking up some time. What am I going to do? So I then remembered this concept from my workplace. You probably heard, some of you, of the 80-20 rule. We used to say, this principle, this rule of thumb, that not all actions are equal, and that if we focus on the 20% or so most impactful things we can do toward a given goal, we can get about 80% toward our goal. And we used to say in my workplace, let's focus on the 20% most important clients because they give us 80% of our business. So I was like, this is what I need to do. I need to now focus on what is the 80-20 rule for zero waste living? What can I do that I can feel good about, even though I'm never going to get to 100%? I'm never going to get to the zero in zero waste living. impossible anyway, right? And so I did a lot of research. I stumbled on this book, which a lot of you will be familiar with, I think, Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. And in it, this set of scientists come up with a list of 80 actions that, if implemented at all levels, government, private sector, and household and individual level, these 80 actions, if they were taken, would actually reverse global warming. So I excitedly looked through this list, and I was skimming it for, I was searching the list for those things that were most in the hands of us as individuals to actually do something about. And refrigerant management, even though I do a lot to manage my refrigerator in terms of food waste, what they mean here is really for government regulation and private sector innovation to solve. What they mean by wind turbines, again, is not for us at the individual household level. But the third thing on the list, reducing food waste. This was the biggest aha moment for me because, as I said, I'd been working on climate change, but I had a blind spot about food waste. So seeing it was number 3 on this list, but then digging deeper and seeing that half of all food waste in this country and in other developed countries is attributable to us at the household level. We, more than any other group, are responsible for food waste, which means that there's something we can do about that problem. So that was very exciting for me. Plant-rich diet was not a big surprise. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm leaning as much toward plant meals as I can. Recycling and composting further down on the list, and single-use plastics is also woven into the recommendations. And so I looked at all the actions that I could spend my time on, and I realized that they fit pretty neatly into 3 themes that I call the magic 3. And these were, by the way, all actions that I felt I wouldn't have to upend my life to do. All these actions meet at the intersection of ease and impact. And they fall within these 3 categories: focus on food, purge plastics, and recycle right. And I basically do workshops on all 3 of these. I like talking about all 3 of these. Food is one of my favorite things to talk about, food waste as well as a plant-based diet. But what I thought I'd do for the rest of the time is talk about plastics. If you have questions or you want to chat about food waste or recycling, we can do that too. But I wanted to just put a light on plastics, and then talk a little about that activism piece and what it means to influence others. So on plastics, again, bear with me. I think a lot of you know this, but I always say there are 4 things we should care about with respect to plastics. The first one is it ends up in the environment. It's light, it's in rivers, it's in oceans, it's all over the streets. We know that, and it's a big problem. It is also a very big climate change problem. It is responsible for 3.4% of greenhouse gas emissions, the production, everything along the whole value chain to do with plastics. This is more than the aviation sector, 3.4%, and it is growing by leaps and bounds, right? This is where fossil fuel companies see the future, in plastics. So it's a climate change problem. It's an environmental problem. It is also a pollution problem, and it's a social equity problem for anyone who works at or lives near one of these production facilities that takes the fossil fuels and, with a lot of heat and carbon intensity, turns them into the polymers that make the plastic. You don't want to, I hope none of you lives near one of these. Very carcinogenic and other toxic pollutants are spewed out of these factories. And again, this is a growing industry. So it's a big social equity problem because these factories don't exist in my backyard. They exist a lot in the southeast, near the refineries. And the 4th issue, of course, we're reading about more and more, is that plastics break down into tinier and tinier pieces in the form of micro and nanoplastics that we know we're breathing in every day, we're eating, we're drinking. And you've all seen the articles now. It's showing up in every single part of the human body. So scary stuff. And I think any of us who focus on this want to get this stuff, the single-use plastic stuff, out of our lives as much as we can. The most common question I get is, where do you start? Because plastics is everywhere. It is everywhere. And where I started, the starting point for me was the plastic water bottle. I just realized I had props next to me, but I never sit in this room, and I left all my props in the other room. So just bear with me. But I always have my water bottle with me, my reusable water bottle, because I realized when I was in my corporate job, I was going from meeting room to meeting room, and I'd grab one of the bottles of water, and on average, probably 2 a day. So I was going through every year more than a couple hundred of plastic water bottle I was creating as trash. Obviously, moving into remembering and carrying around my reusable bottle has made all the difference. I'm not responsible for this trash anymore. Am I changing the world with this? No, but I'm changing my own life, and I think that's a good start. But it's not nothing either, right? Then, and again, I really want to hear from you all. You could put it in the chat, or we can have a discussion in a few minutes. What are some of the hacks, the switches that you most easily went to, and what are the ones that you're still working on now? So I will tell you, oh, sorry, this is still my water bottle. I lost this one, unfortunately, but this was me at the Grand Canyon with my water bottle posing. I drink my coffee at home every morning. However, once a week, I go with friends for a walk, and we almost always end up at Starbucks afterwards. And I ask my particular Starbucks, even a few years ago, would have ceramic mugs. You have to ask for them, though. So sometimes they didn't have enough. So I would try to remember to bring my own reusable mug when we would go for Saturday coffee. And it took a long time, I will admit, but the 4 or 5 friends that I have the coffee with afterwards have gradually moved away from the disposable coffee cup, which we all know now is not actually recyclable because of the plastic lining inside. So I was so thrilled the day that I realized all of my friends, and I don't hound them, I don't harass them, but that they had migrated over to reusable coffee. So I snapped this picture when I realized we were all in. Another one is, the takeout container. So I don't know if you've read this, but that black plastic, first of all, hardly ever recycled. It's actually accepted in DC in the blue bin, but it hardly ever gets recycled. And it's often made up of used car parts, other black plastic that you probably don't want touching your food. It's bad enough heating plastic transmits the plastic, but this black plastic, I don't want it on my food. So I started, even before the pandemic, I started bringing my own containers to restaurants for takeout. Now, that meant I couldn't do delivery, but I could do takeout. And I will just admit to all of you, I don't know how many of us are on this call, please don't report me, but it's illegal in DC to have restaurants load up your own containers, bring them back into the kitchen and load them up with your food. In California, and I know in New York, you've got some regulation that allows your Reduces programs to work in restaurants. But in DC, it's a big no-no. So when I do this, I'm doing an illegal action. So I can't take my DC Reduces stickers around to restaurants in DC, unfortunately. But what I can do is spread the word about, that there are other options. And I'm going to come to one of those other options in a moment. So maybe I'm just thinking, well, maybe I'll just give this last section, and then I would love if we could have a little discussion. This last section is about the ripple effect, because if you're like me and you started paying attention, and I assume all of you have, to the plastic that you're bringing into your lives and how much you want to purge it, eliminate it as much as possible, then once you start doing these things, it is amazing that more people are not. At least that's how I felt the first time. And again, I've got this in the other room, the first time I brought my produce bag into a grocery store. And I thought, oh, this is such a great solution, and looked around. Nobody else does it. I'm the weirdo in the grocery store that brings their own bags. So when you start doing this, you really want, right, to influence others. That's what the Reduces programs are all about. When I was writing my book, I interviewed an Oxford professor of behavioral science who said to me about this concept of the ripple effect, creating, influencing behaviors for others, was that the key is understanding the power of individual behavior to set social norms. And the reason for that is we are all social animals. We look to what our neighbors are doing. We look to what our family and friends and peers are doing. And consciously and unconsciously, we follow what they're doing. So that means it's a huge opportunity for us. That's what the Reduces programs are about, right? Taking the nerd factor, the weirdo factor out of it and normalizing it. So one of the things I do, coming back to the takeout food idea, is I never go to a restaurant I try not to forget my collapsible, again, the prop is in the other room, so forgive me, but this is a collapsible takeout container that I put in my purse. I know for the men on the call, if there are any of you, this is not so easy, but it fits really easily into my purse. I never finish the Thai food at my husband's favorite Thai restaurant, and I bring it home and it becomes my lunch the next day. Inevitably, when I do this, the waiter or waitress will notice. Every person around me will notice, because it's an unusual thing to open up this silicone container and put my food in it. And almost always someone will say to me, I never thought of that. What a great idea. I need to start doing that. And I'm sure the ones who don't say that are thinking it, or at least that's what I'd like to believe, but I think it's true. So one thing is model the social norms you want to see. The second thing is whether you grab a recipe from Anne Marie's wonderful cookbook, which I will endorse, or this is, I think, sorry, Anne Marie, this is a wrong picture. This is an Ottolenghi recipe, I think. When you don't have to go around and shame your friends who are not vegetarian or plant leaning. You can just use your enthusiasm to tell your friends about the fantastic new recipe you tried yesterday. And if it happens to be a vegetarian meal, so be it. But that's what I do. When I find a great recipe, all my friends know about it. They have the recipe in their inbox or on their text the next day. Patronizing, so that's probably not a good word anymore, but supporting local sustainability businesses. I'm lucky. There are 2 zero waste stores in my region. They're not super close to me, so I really make a point of waiting for the things that I know need refilling. I don't let my husband run to the Safeway and get the detergent. I wait till we can go to the zero waste store, which we do about once a month. It's worth the effort to support them. I also was thrilled to find out there's a new business that just started up this year that is taking care of that problem of the restaurant takeout. They've gotten an exception made for their program, which uses plastic, but reusable plastic containers. They've partnered with a dozen restaurants in DC where you can order through Uber for these meals to be delivered in these reusable containers and then returned. So that's a business. If I've got a choice of, going to getting takeout from a place in Bethesda versus using one of these places in downtown DC, I will use this company to support them. And then finally, but this is where activism really comes in, amplifying our voice, my voice, I realized, by joining in with others who are already rowing that boat in the direction I want to go in, has been huge. It's been a huge source of satisfaction to me. Again, when I was writing my book, I interviewed someone from the DC chapter of the Sierra Club. That's how I got to know what they were doing, the Zero Waste Committee. And then sometime after my book came out, I joined them. And I was just last weekend sitting at my farmer's market, getting postcards signed by residents to send to their local representatives at the DC Council because one of the council members is going to introduce a bottle deposit bill, I think early in the new year. So this has been a huge source of satisfaction to me. And then, of course, there's DC Reduces, which is whether all of you have your own Reduces programs or you're thinking of doing one, hugely satisfying. We've got in DC 65 shops with the sticker in the window. And then I just want to go back to the dry cleaners now. I just got this video 3 days ago. I went back in. I don't go very often anymore. So bear with me. It's not the best quality, but here you go. Look for the green bags, the green reusable bags. Oh, that's my husband speaking in the background. Okay, I'll edit it better for the next one. Okay, and then if you want to see what a ripple effect looks like, so you remember the owner, Yoon, when there's 6 of us volunteers that go around asking coffee shops, because it is okay and legal in DC to have coffee shops refill or fill your own container with coffee, mom and pop shops, so you can bring your own reusable garment bags. When we bring the DC Reduces stickers to dry cleaners, guess what? They've all heard of President Valet and Yoon and her husband. And so we don't have to do a whole dog and pony show with them. They know what it's about. And we've got more than a dozen dry cleaners that have signed up to DC Reduces because President Valet took a risk. The husband finally agreed and they took a risk and they started in this new direction. And now it's a thing in DC that is not, climbing a mountain to do. I always end, Anne-Marie, even when you're not on the call, I always end with Anne-Marie's quote because it so encapsulates what I live for, which is putting perfection aside. We don't need a handful of people doing zero waste perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. I think, Anne-Marie, that is the most brilliant quote in the entire zero waste landscape. And I'll stop there. But so again, I'm preaching to the converted. You all are doing this stuff already. And so this is really meant to be telling you my story and getting the conversation going around what are you doing, what's working, and what are you trying next? So I will stop there. Oh, and I see there are things in the chat which I have not had a chance to look at, but I will.
So thank you for that. That's fantastic. I did want to let folks know to make sure to stay for the duration of the meeting. We did skip a couple items in the agenda, so apologies for that. But we do want to make sure that folks can hear the announcements and also participate in the breakout social sessions afterwards. And now that there are some questions, if you'd like to take some of those questions, I can read them out, or if you have access to your chat.
Now I do. Yeah, now I do. Thank you.
Sure thing.
I just want to comment. I love what Tim said about how his journey began at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in 2007. That is really cool to hear. Someone is asking about the name of the company that is doing the takeout containers. They are plastic, yes, they are, but they're not BPA lined and they're food grade. When I get anything in plastic, I immediately take it out, as I'm sure most of you do. They are called To Go Green. And it's 2 brothers. I've interviewed them. They're fantastic. It's a To Go Green, and I should try to put it in the To Go. Well, I'm not going to look up right now, but what their website is. But if you Google To Go Green, that will come up. They are lovely brothers who got disgusted with all the takeout during the pandemic. They're vegetarians, they're vegan, and they were ordering Ethiopian all the time and bringing in all this plastic into their house. And so that's, oh, thank you. Tim put the website up. And where can I buy the collapsible silicone containers? That's a great question. There are a few sites. I've found one that I use is called Flat Stacks, and it's not a paid anything. It's just, that's the one that I've been ordering from, because I originally ordered it on Etsy and then that source disappeared. So, yeah, I was comfortable with the way they answered my questions. It's still silicone, it's still plastic, but thank you, L'Oreal, for the Flat Stacks. Again, I don't take anything from them, but that's the one I'm ordering from now when people ask me. Oh, and someone's including, thank you, Yayoi, the link to the Post article highlighting the issues with reuse of plastic containers. And I don't know if that's the same article that Karen Lash, who I saw join, who's a friend of mine because of all of this, shared with me. I don't know if that's the same article, but she shared a fantastic article about, well, actually that article was about how little is being recycled, I believe. But Karen, if you know what I'm talking about, maybe you want to share that article. Someone else is saying, Shara, I encourage people to support their local business. If you have a zero waste store near you, they likely have to-go containers. They do. I will say, I have been pushing, thank you very much, Shara, for that comment. I have been pushing my 2 zero waste stores in my area to offer the collapsible containers, because those are the ones that are really convenient to carry around. They do both carry containers that are reusable, but they're, I think, I don't know how to pronounce it, Stojo or Stoyo. They're expensive, but they're also not collapsible. So the problem is I just really need that collapsible version so that I be sure I have room in my purse to carry it. And Lori is saying Pampered Chef has silicone pouches and Ziplocs. Yeah, that would be a good alternative. Oh, Stoyo are definitely collapsible. Okay. Well, then the ones they're carrying are not collapsible. So thank you for clarifying that. Great. Any other questions? And there are a lot of experts on this call. Someone's asking if it's being recorded, and it is being recorded. And I'll let Yayoi say, I think the recording is available afterwards, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm happy to take any questions live. Oh, Shara, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No worries. Okay. I just was going to show, here's Stojo, here's a bowl.
Yeah.
Okay, with the top, and the bowl collapses all the way down. Okay. Here's a mug. This is collapsed. This is actually a giant mug. It's 24 ounces. So this is like, if you go and get a monster smoothie, they also come in 16 and 12 ounces. But
Ooh.
if you can see, but there's, so it's
Yeah.
huge. I mean, this is like,
Okay.
this is 24 ounces, but anyway, that's one brand as well.
Thank you. That's the one I was referring to, and I'm pretty sure they carry that. And maybe that's my fault, but I didn't think they were or the ones they were carrying were collapsible. So I will go back. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
A shout out to all my fellow zero waste store owners, because I think it's really hard for us, because we have, you know, people talk about wanting to do this stuff, and yet a lot of people aren't coming to our stores, and we have a lot of stuff to be able to share with others. So definitely support local where you can.
Yeah, and you're not saying this, but I'll say it. It's, you know, well, maybe thin margins is not the way to say it, but the 2 zero waste stores in my area, I know, are hurting and they need the business. So definitely it's worth, again, in my case, I wait until we're ready to go to the zero waste store before buying those things that I know are available there. And it's easy to go to the local Safeway, but it's worth making the effort to head to the zero waste store. So if you have a zero waste store near you, use them so that they stay in business. Okay. Anything else? And we can continue the conversation, of course, in the breakout sessions. Tracy, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to make a comment. I live an hour from Albany, New York, which has a really fantastic food co-op. Last I knew, it was a $30 million a year business. and they have the largest bulk section in the Northeast. And so that's really, food co-ops are really the original zero waste stores. And, we just need to support those as well and encourage them to reduce their plastic use.
Yes, if I can just add to that, Tracy, right near the zero waste store that's closest to me, which is in Tacoma Park, Maryland,
Mhm.
is the co-op, which
Mhm.
existed many more years before the zero waste store. And so the zero waste store purposely didn't start carrying food because they didn't want to
Mhm.
cannibalize the business of the co-op. The co-op has, last I checked with them, more than 400 items in bulk, even though they're not a bulk store per se, they're a grocery store.
Right. No, we have
It's
3
amazing.
aisles in bulk.
Yeah,
You
it is
know,
a beautiful, beautiful site. And I think we need to tell those co-ops that they also, they're potentially missing part of their business by not appealing to those of us who are not just trying to save money by shopping in bulk, but also trying to save on the waste.
Well, I think sustainability is part of the mission statement of many co-ops, but they have trouble. They have challenges fulfilling that. No, we have an environment committee, and I will share the recording with the environment committee, and actually with some of the department managers. But
That's
yeah, we have all the herbs and spices and teas in bulk. We have, you know, every kind of, we have oils and nut butters and tamari and miso and,
You're
snacks
making me hungry.
all in bulk, and coffee and, granola, and it's just
Yeah,
seaweed. It's just a lot of bulk stuff.
yeah, that's great. It's great you mentioned that because it's not just about the consumer products, it's also about the groceries. And someone else is saying, Trish is saying, I'm giving zero waste items as gifts this year and also asking for only zero waste gifts. I have to drop. Oh, okay. Thank you for joining. I know we have other things on the agenda, so I don't want to, but if there are other questions, we'll
I
definitely.
have a question. Can you hear me? This is Dee Dee,
Hi.
from Zero Waste, in Warren County. And, so I loved your talk about, having friends do like bring their dishes back, with you when you go to the restaurant and stuff like that. I've really been kind of promoting that. And everybody I talked to said, oh yeah, that is a great idea. And some of them I know have started doing it, which is great. Are you familiar with anybody? I just feel like there should be some kind of I don't know much about social media, but some kind of social media campaign where, people do that and then they take their pictures at the restaurant and post it. Do you know of anybody that's doing something like that? Because I'd like that concept to spread the word, and then it would give the restaurants, because we don't have a BYO program here in our area, but just the idea that, I think people would think it's a good idea, but try to promote it that way and make it sort of good for the restaurants. Are you familiar with anybody that's doing something like that I could talk to and get some ideas on how? I don't know how to do it.
Other people on the line may know, but I will just say, for those of us who do have the BYO, the Reduces programs, it's a great opportunity, I think, to for me anyway, for us at DC Reduces, 65 shops is great. I think what we're missing is the engagement. And one of the things I really would like to do as our next campaign is to offer some, raffle some gift cards, hopefully paid for by the businesses. I have to figure that out, and get people to enter the raffle by doing a selfie of them with their their BYO item, their coffee cup or whatever. But in terms of actual platforms that do that, let me just ask if Yayoi or Jill or Anne Marie or anyone else on the call knows of such a thing. Oh, Tim is saying he shares his successes on Nextdoor and Instagram and Facebook. That's great.
Okay.
Oh, and Danielle is saying, we're doing that on the MSWAB Instagram page where we tag businesses in our stories with the hashtag BYO and add it to our page's highlights so they remain visible. Oh, cool. That's great.
Oh, wait, say that again. Can you
She's-
repeat that, or can I
Sure.
find it?
She's put in the chat. Danielle, do you want to say this? that they're doing this. They have an Instagram page called MS. I don't know if the Instagram page is called.
Yeah, I can chime in. L'Oreal and I are part of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board in New York City. So we have started kind of a quote unquote campaign where we'll tag a business that allows people to bring their own cups or containers. We'll tag the business and, you know, post a photo of our container and add the hashtag BYO so that we can add it to our stories and also add it as a highlight on our Instagram page so that it's always visible.
And I just need to learn about all those things. And I will, because that's exactly what, I think that would really be helpful, to get some of the folks, again, because everybody I've spoken to, they, oh, I never thought of that, like like your experience, Stephanie, was, yeah, that I hadn't thought of that before, but now once they thought of it, then, and I have a group of friends, and whenever we go out to restaurants, we all have our takeout containers and, our for our leftovers and but so far we've never seen anybody else doing it. And it's like, oh.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lonely thing, but you're setting the example.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been telling the people at the restaurant to, hey, why don't you encourage people to do that? So we'll see.
Right, so there's
Thank
one.
you. Tara has a question. Oh, sorry, L'Oreal, I should let you do the moderating.
No worries. Yep, we have one more question from this person here, and then we'll proceed with the announcements and.
I just wanted to speak to Dee Dee's question. There's one of our members, one of our board members had the idea of posting Google reviews with your cups and then making sure you mention it in Google reviews as a way to get more publicity out there and stuff, which I think is a really good idea. So we've been encouraging our volunteers to do that as well. And I think Yelp had done some sections on sustainability too. So if you leave Yelp reviews, that kind of thing, I don't know if that's more or less helpful than like social media, which we also do some of, but yeah.
Every idea is helpful. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much for that, and thank you for all the questions. If you have any more questions, you can include them in the chat. But let's proceed, and if we could get the agenda on the screen there, so we can just have a quick overview. We did skip a couple things, so excuse me for that. But we would like to go through the announcements, and then we'll jump right into the breakout socials. I'll be adding some information about how to join our next meeting as well in the chat. So just keep your eye out for any more additional things in the chat as well. So to the next slide. Yep, it's fundraising season. So if you have an opportunity to help and assist, maybe even support a fun plastic-free July contest, tips on our volunteer efforts, you can go to givebutter.com at US Reduces. And it is Giving Tuesday, so if you have a giving heart, feel free to use that link to support the work. Moving forward. So we have Jill's letters to inspire brands. This is to fight against Dunkin's, Baskin Robbins, etc. Just to BYO your containers. So please sign the letter. I'm going to add the link in the chat. And Jill, did you want to speak on this, or I can just? Yeah, it looks like you included it in the chat. So.
All right. And okay, so I don't know what happened to the slide. It's a little bit off, but I just want to announce the next meeting for the first meeting of 2025. We already have a speaker lined up. It's gonna be February 4th, 2005. So please register for the February meeting. Thank you, L'Oreal and Ian. The registration link is there. She's an amazing speaker. Jenny Davis from Plastic Free Lunch Day. I'm sorry, actually Cafeteria Culture. And this organization, Cafeteria Culture, is very famous for Plastic Free Lunch Day, where they encourage the cafeterias in the K-12 to go plastic free. So she's going to talk about that. And then she's also let me know that she's currently currently very, very concerned about food packaging in cafeteria. Like, so like people, we tend to focus on foodwares, like, like plates and cups and single-use foodwares. But she is noticing increasingly that the packages that food come into the cafeteria itself has an enormous volume. And she audited it, and how much it is, it's like something like 60% of the trash is actually from the packaging or something like that. So she's going to share all of that in her talk, and it's going to be super interesting, and we look forward to that. So please register now, and that is very helpful for us. We are running all grassroots and volunteer. So spread the word and share the link, and please register. And so we look forward to the next year. Yeah. Okay, thank you, L'Oreal. So the next is breakout room.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Kathy, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi. I am just wondering, given the very disappointing outcome of the global plastics treaty negotiations this week, whether there is any thought to, how might that impact the group or the work, the efforts? Obviously, local is the area, and that's the place we can have an impact, which makes this group and this effort that much more important. But I just wondered if maybe in the new year there'd be a speaker or some way to help us kind of rally and redouble our efforts.
So to answer that question, there are many organizations hosting many webinars on ink and the COPs. So I do not personally feel there is quite a need to replicate their effort, but like I'd love to share the efforts by Gaia, and there's just so many organizations working on this. There's a Plastic Pollution Coalition. They're all working on this, and there's so many webinars out there that we can learn from. There's so many social media posts, emails. There's so many ways to learn about these, but like local efforts are always so important. And so I think that's where we do what we do here best, work on local issues and connect with each other to support each other. That's what we do here. Thank you. And I can put the links to the Gaia's posts and emails or something like that in the chat as well. But there's so much information out there.
Fantastic. So let's proceed with the breakout socials, and hopefully folks will stay. We'll be separating folks in groups. There will be questions in there, and you can introduce yourself